All right, awesome. Yeah, thank you, Heather, and thank you guys for inviting me. Um, uh, yeah, like Heather said, I'm the BrAPI project coordinator. I'll be uh, talking quite a bit about BrAPI sort of in the context of software integration um, in this talk. If you've heard me present before, there's a good chance you've seen some of these slides before. You know, I've mixed and matched as needed, but this may be review for some of you. But yeah, hopefully we'll get some new ideas out there. All right, so I wanted to get started with this little sort of cartoon I made for a different group, a different project, but I like how it shows sort of the one of the concepts of interoperability. And really when we're talking about, you know, software integration and system integration and interoperability, we're talking about data sharing. Um, and you can have, you know, many different levels of data sharing that I would say qualify as interoperability. Um, you know, and the distinguisher is just the level of automation. So, you know, on the left we have less automated data sharing where you're um, sending files back and forth and you know, interpreting that as a human. There's a lot of manual effort going on there versus all the way on the right where you've got sort of a data federation model where everything is interconnected to everything else and it's all one cohesive system. It all, you know, it all appears to be one cohesive system. So, you know, the level of automation is something we're working with here, and you know, generally when we're talking about system integration and interoperability, um, usually systems are interoperable in some way, but we're trying to push that more automated. Um, and, and again, to illustrate this point, you know, manual interoperability, I would say these two systems in this cartoon are interoperable. You can get data from application one, extract it out, put it into some Excel file, maybe futz with that Excel file a little bit, and then load it into application two and you know, continue on with your work. So this is slow and cumbersome and maybe error prone, but these two systems are interoperable. But we just are looking to automate this process a little bit. And sort of the another dimension of interoperability I wanted to cover and to look at here is sort of these three levels of interoperability: semantic, syntactic, and protocol. So semantic interoperability, you know, concerns the definitions of the words and data. So, you know, classic example, this is your ontologies, sort of defining, making sure that when I say, you know, when I say something, it means the same thing as when you say something. Um, Syntactic interoperability is the structure of the data, how it's organized. So, you know, we've got a VCF file and a HapMap file. Maybe they have the same type of data in them, but they are structured differently. And so the you know, being able to interoperate syntactically, and then the protocol, of course, how we're transferring this information from one place to another. And so, yeah, on the left here, I just sort of put a little scale. The semantic interoperability is really very important for humans. You know, making sure that the language we use and the things we're talking about mean the same thing. Um, Whereas sort of as we go down, the protocol interoperability is a little bit less important for humans, where um, whether you get a data file sent to you via email or over an FTP site or downloaded off the internet, we as humans are pretty good at, figuring out where that file might be, going to get it and reading it from wherever it might be and understanding it. So, protocol interoperability isn't so important. Whereas the reverse is true for software, and it's something we have to think about where the semantic interoperability isn't super important for software. It's going to be looking more at the syntactic interoperability for clues. So it's going to be looking at the structure of data to tell it that two things are the same, because they may be in the same place structurally, or they may have exactly the same identifier or whatever. So that's a lot easier for the software to figure out. Or less important for the software to figure out, but then the protocol and the data structure do become very important for the software, because it doesn't know how to search and find things on its own necessarily. All right, and that will bring us to BrAPI, and so I'll jump into BrAPI here a little bit, but the focus of BrAPI is really the bottom two, creating a standard for syntactic interoperability and the standard for protocol for software to interact with each other. All right, so what is the reading API, BrAPI? The standard definition I give, BrAPI is a standardized RESTful web service API specification for communicating breeding data. Generally, there's more used in plant breeding data, though Breeding Insight, I believe actually the Breeding Insight organization is the first to use it on non-plants. So that's exciting. I'm glad it still works. I won't get into all of these terms, but I do want to make sure that we're clear on what an API is. This, again, we're talking about the protocol interoperability, and saying the protocol here is a RESTful web service API, and that is something that's got a very specific definition that software knows how to look at and interact with. So yeah, just make sure we're all on the same page here. An API, application programming interface, is similar to a user interface. So where you as a user might use a graphical user interface or command line or whatever to interact with a piece of software. You're going to input data, start commands, start processes, and read data out of it. It's exactly the same set of operations that, one piece of software would use through the API to another piece of software. So same set of things that you would use to interact with piece of software, only we're doing it programmatically from one piece of software to another. And this is the other piece, looking at the syntactic interoperability. BrAPI is a standardized specification, so it's a standardized set of data models that all have the same domain within the breeding. Within the breeding domain, they have a standard set of data models for modeling all the data that you might interact with, all the data and metadata you might interact with in the breeding domain. So sort of defining the set of data models as our syntactic interoperability and defining the RESTful API web services, web service APIs as the protocol interoperability. We cover those two on the list I had earlier. And the last point I like to make on this slide is BrAPI at its core is just a technical specification. A lot of people get the misconception that BrAPI is a piece of software that I could hand them. It's at its core, it's just a set of documentation to tell developers how to write software to communicate using the standard. It's not a piece of software itself. That said, we do have a big community of people and projects working with BrAPI, so there are implementations available of the specification to you don't have to build it from scratch each time. But at its core, that's the important thing to know is it's just the technical spec. Looking quickly at the different domains or data models that the BrAPI covers. We've divided these into 4 different modules. This is purely for bookkeeping and making things easier for us to document and to find. They are, as you can see from the diagram, they're all interconnected and they all work with each other as needed. And pretty self-explanatory modules. The BrAPI core is roughly around program management, setting up studies, trial management, that sort of thing. The BrAPI germplasm is all about germplasm, managing germplasm, crosses, seeds, etc. BrAPI genotyping is all the data models for genotyping data. And BrAPI phenotyping has all the models specific to collecting phenotypes. And yeah, so just to take a quick look at sort of what the standard request response loop might look like, how you might set up BrAPI implementation here. This diagram is specific to BrAPI and APIs in general. But the same sort of structure could be imagined for any interoperability project where basically on one side you've got the client application, and somewhere in the client application layer you've got a request builder, something building a request to make to another system, another piece of software. In this case for BrAPI, that request gets sent over HTTP and gets absorbed by the API layer on the server application side. Some action is performed, data is stored, data is retrieved, whatever, and a response is sent back to the response handler in the client application, either collecting the data that was sent back or acknowledging that data was stored or whatever. And this is a pretty standard loop here that you'll see with a lot of well, for all RESTful APIs and a lot of sort of more general interoperability projects. The key here for BrAPI and sort of a little more into how BrAPI works is these areas in bold, the request builder, the object mapping layer, and the response handler. Those are all responsible for mapping whatever the internal data structures are to the application to the BrAPI standard. So you take the client application, whatever internal data structures you have, map it to the BrAPI standard, send it over. BrAPI RESTful service. It gets consumed by the server. The object mapping layer transforms that BrAPI object back into whatever that server application uses. And then the reverse when sending the response maps their internal to BrAPI, sends it over the BrAPI path, and then the client can unravel the BrAPI into its own internal data structures. All right. Why do we need BrAPI or something like BrAPI? I have this image from earlier. I already described this as a possible interoperability, but it's manual, it's messy and slow and can lead to errors. So we want to try and automate this, and that's what BrAPI is for, to try and automate this image. So instead, we'll change it to look a little bit more like this. So now, we've gotten rid of a lot of the user interaction. Now we've just got a user over in application 2 making some request to application 1. Say we're making a request for data. That data can then be transferred automatically from application 1 to 2. And now, we don't even need to store it. Maybe it's just to present to the user for the, making a decision or whatever the user might need. Or maybe we do need to store it. We'll stick it in the database for application 2 or cache it or whatever we might need. But now it's, there's a lot more flexibility now by automating this process. So yeah, again, this sequence of events, that's the protocol interoperability, both applications using this same API protocol to speak to each other. They know how to speak to each other programmatically, and it's easier to automate the transfer of data from one to the other. Where then the BrAPI specification comes in, the object specification, means that many different applications can now all be speaking the same language syntactically as well. So now the user doesn't even need to know where the data is coming from. We can swap out one application for another, and because they're both sharing the same protocol and they're sharing the same syntactical structure of the data, this flow should still work, and we've connected to a different application or even a different type of application if we've got some sort of data warehouse here. Whatever it is, now these applications are all speaking the same language, both protocol and syntax. All right. Yeah, I'll quickly run through here the BrAPI community, because there's a community around this standard. As the more people that we can, and the more tools that start using the BrAPI standard, the stronger it gets, as there are more options, more different types of applications that can be swapped out here. So right now, BrAPI community consists of over 37 registered partner organizations from all around the world, roughly 250 plant breeders, software developers, data managers, etc. And we've got a formal governance set up with 6 elected members of the community serving as the advisory board, managing the long-term goals of the project. And this is little slide I like to show, sort of showing the global nature of the BrAPI project and this community that we've got stretching all around the world. Another key piece of the community is the BrAPI hackathons, which pre-COVID we were having pretty regularly. Our most recent one was just this past spring in North Carolina. But yeah, this is how the BrAPI standard gets developed, is through this community coming together and bringing more use cases to try and fit into the standard. And when it works, great. And if it doesn't, then we adjust the standard to manage the new use cases without breaking the old ones. Continuously improving the data structures that we have. And yeah, finally, I'm going to run through some of the applications and the impacts from the BrAPI project. So some of the I'll say solved use cases that we've gone through. KSU Fieldbook app may be familiar to some of you. We've worked a lot with the KSU Fieldbook app to make sure it's BrAPI compatible. So now, in theory, you should be able to connect the Fieldbook directly to any breeding database that's also BrAPI compliant, and download all your field and plot layout information. And then once you're done collecting data, upload all those observations back to the database. Still working out, a few bugs here and there as they arise with this, but this project has gone a long way. And looking at sample management, this was a use case that has been addressed, and we've got the prototype for this working. I don't know if it's actually being used in production anywhere, but the set of data structures and APIs and everything is there and set up ready to be used. And basically this the concept here is some sample management system, whether it's within a breeding database or external to it, is managing the sample data, sending all that data to some genotyping lab for genotyping, and then also sending that same sample data to some genotype database to store that information later, and sort of automating this, again, looking at automation, just automating this whole process. A lot of people are still using emails to send this type of data. We want to try and cut down on that manual labor and just be able to connect the systems directly, get the data where it needs to go. This is a use case that's actually been solved by a couple of different groups now, or implemented by a couple of different groups, I should say. And this is when you've got all your data collected and you're looking at doing some downstream analysis, connecting phenotype or breeding database and a genotype database to some sort of analytics engine or tool or visualization or whatever. Allow that engine to pull in the data it needs to do the calculations, and then spit out some useful information to a user or scientist. And excuse me, finally, one of the interesting side effects that's come out of the BrAPI community is the concept of BrAPs. BrAPs are little um, uh, single web page applications, visualization tools, whatever, that are entirely run off of the BrAPI standard. So in theory, if you've got a database and a web server that is BrAPI compatible, then you can take any one of these BrAPs and add it to your own website pretty quickly and easily, and just connect it to your own database, and it should start running off of your own data. So you don't need to spend a lot of time building a pedigree viewer or a field map or whatever. And this also brings up another point that I like to talk about in terms of when we're talking about interoperability. I started off this talk talking about interoperability and how it's all about data sharing and communicating that data, and that still applies here, but we've sort of flipped the problem on its head a little bit, and instead of moving the data and sharing the data, we're actually sharing the tools that are being built. So the data gets to stay and live where it is, and we're actually sharing these BrAPs within the community. So that the data stays where it is, you share the tool, and then the tool can interact with the data where it is, which is another use case for these types of problems. And as data sets get bigger, it's a lot easier to bring the tools to the data than it is to bring the data to the tools. Yeah, and looking at sort of more generally, we've got a whole list of BrAPI compatible software on the website. You can see a couple of the BrAPs in here, but as well as other tools and logos. So I encourage everyone to go check out the compatible software page on BrAPI.org to see all the different applications that you can connect to using the BrAPI standard. Yeah, BrAPI standard specification. Some resources about BrAPI and our work, and I think that'll pretty much wrap it up. If there are any questions.